Hello and welcome back to the channel. Now, if you're looking at these two machines here, and you know what they are, I guess you're thinking, come on, Degsy, really? Is this what we're going to have a video on? Two really basic Barcrest forces. Yes, I'm afraid we are. This video is about the very simple era, in the £15 jackpot era, when you could basically just force Barcrests. That was essentially all you did. You forced them out for the jackpot repeater and hoped that they streaked. Didn't last for the whole £15 era. It got chipped out sort of at the back end of the £15 era. The two machines that you're looking at here both got rechips, and unfortunately we are running the rechip ROMs here. There were others of them as well. There was one called Neptune's Treasure. There was a semi-clone called Shake Your Money. There was a pretty much a straight clone of Arabian Knights called Red Hot Knights. Then there were machines like Rumble in the Jungle, which had a very different layout but essentially played the same. Now, do be aware that these were different to the likes of Lottle Luck and, Psycho Cash Beast and Frenzy, where you could do the manipulator. That was the knockback manipulator. I have done a video about Frenzy and Psycho Cash Beast. That is back on the channel somewhere. These were different to that. They were absolute, you straight just force them for the jackpot repeater, and you were hoping really for 45 or 60 quid they would either repeat, or they'd do an invincible board the next board and that would repeat, or you'd get two invincible boards, whatever it may be. But basically you were hoping that you were going to get 45 or 60 quid out of them. So admittedly not much sort of meat there to make a video out of. However, these machines are kind of interesting in my own past, because this era of machines were the very first machines that I played what you could call inverted commas properly. I have talked at great length on the channel about how I really was just a dumb addict who effectively lost all my money right from when I started playing fruit machines in the £4.80 jackpot era, right the way through to 15 quid, and it was middle-ish of the £15 era that I first found out about forcing. Now, at the time, I was on the CMA mailing list. I've mentioned that before in the Fruit Machine Emulation History videos. And what we kind of did, we were exchanging, tips and tricks publicly, but nothing too sensitive was allowed to be posted publicly. And I posted a sort of guide, if you will, for this machine here, Hi-Jinx, which was in a local pub. And I played it an awful lot. It was on a £15 jackpot. This originally started as a £10 jackpot, and it got a little bit of a clumsy upgrade to 10 quid there. As you can see, it doesn't quite fit with the cash progression on the cash values, but there was one of these in a local pub on a £15 jackpot, and I kind of wrote a little semi-guide for it for the CMA mailing list. And it was I posted it to the mailing list so everyone could see it, because I was kind of doing okay at it. I kind of learnt all the features and I'd found out what was what, and I could kind of do okay on it. But someone just mailed me privately. After I mailed my big super duper guide to the mailing list, a guy actually just emailed me, because your email addresses were public on the old Usenet mailing list, and a guy just mailed me directly and basically said, just fuck that, just force it. And I kind of got back to him and said, what do you mean force it? And he said, yeah, just get the jackpot repeater. He said, all you're playing for is just the jackpot repeater or the super streak. So you see the jackpot repeater at the top there, or the super. That's all you need to do, and it'll probably streak. Forget everything that you wrote. That's all that there is to it. And I was like, okay, that sounds interesting. So the very next opportunity I got, as soon as I got home from work, got some cash, got some pound coins, went down to the pub that had this, the Hi-Jinx, got me pint, and thought, this is a bit funny, the idea that you're just going to force out a £15 jackpot fruit machine. That could get quite expensive, surely. How's that going to work? And I forced it out for the £15 jackpot repeater. Can't remember how much it cost me. I've got in my head it was like 20 odd quid, somewhere between 20 and 25 quid. I forced it out, and yeah, it streaked for 45 quid. And all of a sudden I'm 20 odd quid up, and all I've done is just forced out the jackpot repeater on this machine, and straight away I was converted. So from then on, I basically just forced everything. Now, When I say I forced everything, I mean I forced everything. And I didn't really discriminate from one machine to the next. I just thought, right, this is it. That's all you have to do with all fruit machines is you force them. Now, you can imagine how that went on some fruit machines. I remember forcing a Caesar's Palace, the Ace Caesar's Palace, which eventually just took pity on me and dropped in the jackpot and repeated twice. Luckily, I think I got most of my money back, but as you'll know with those machines, for it to get to the jackpot dropping in stage, it must be an absolute maximum happiness. So I walked away thinking, that didn't go too bad, I got my money back. But of course that machine would have had loads of value left in it. I just at that moment in time didn't know any better. I just thought that forcing was the answer to everything. And I even forced like Lotto Lux and Psycho Cash Beast before I found out about the manipulator. I just forced Lotto Lux and Psycho Cash Beast, and you could do okay with that, but of course the manipulator was a lot better. But the thing is, forcing worked quite well for me because there were so many Barcrests around. Barcrests really were the dominant machines in the pubs here. There were machines rather by other manufacturers in the pubs. But if I had to sort of put my finger in the air, I'd say that Barcrest probably accounted for maybe 60% of the fruit machines in the pubs, and there were a lot of these around. I have very clear memories of the pubs of Ramsey, when there were a lot more pubs in Ramsey. I remember all of them being in the pubs at the same time. That is Arabian Knights, Monty Python's Flying Circus, Neptune's Treasure, and Red Hot Nights. They were all variously sited, sometimes two of them, dotted around town. So there would maybe be, off the top of my head, perhaps 10 of these in town, of all these kind of clones and semi-clones, all in town. And I just basically went round and forced them. Now, what kind of happened is if you were forcing them too often, they would tighten up, because this wasn't an emptier by any stretch of the imagination. They did ultimately keep to their percentage. So if you forced them out and you got 45 quid, you had to walk away, and if you hit them again too quickly, they wouldn't recover. I kind of got a little bit greedy about it, because you've got to imagine this was a massive turning point for me, because I went from the guy who had just lost all his money forever and found myself in some very bad places as a result. If you have watched the Gambling Low Ebbs video on this channel, you will know how bad it got at times. And remember, that's only one of the stories of them real low ebbs. There's more in the tank. So this, for me, after a decade of losing, these things having a devastating effect on my life, on my friendship, on my relationships, on my finances, on my jobs, on everything basically, as a destructive addiction will do, pretty much overnight, from that one little email basically saying, "Oh, fuck that, mate, just force it," I went overnight from someone who lost consistently to someone who won consistently. Now, that was not to say that it didn't go wrong for me on some machines, because I was just forcing everything. I was forcing bloody JPMs and I was forcing aces. That's never going to go particularly well. You could kind of force BFMs at that time. Some BFMs kind of did okay on a force, but there weren't that many around. We had quite a few Empires around as well, like Money Monster was a very popular machine. I remember that one. I think that was actually one where Empire actually sort of kind of reskinned a Barcrest machine, because it very much played like a Barcrest on the force. So, armed with that one piece of information, I effectively went from being a big net loser to a net winner, albeit playing very suboptimally. But to give you an idea, a year before I got that email telling me just force it, things were so bad that when I got paid at the end of the month, because I couldn't get a bank account at that time because my credit rating was so fucked from my shenanigans when I'd lived in the UK, I couldn't even open a bank account. So I was getting paid at the end of a month with a cashable check. And what I would do is go to the bank, I would cash my check, and then I would Mrs. Degsy would basically say, right, you need to give me 650 quid of that to cover rent and bills and food and all the rest of it, and you can keep what's left, knowing of course that what was left would be spunked by me in the pubs, on the fruit machines and in the arcades over the next few days. All the rest of my money would go a week or two into the month. The only variable really was how long it would last before I hit the inevitable losing streak until next payday, when I would have to hand over a good chunk of my wage again to cover the necessities. So that's like going 12 months prior to getting this information about the force. I was so bad that I had to, I was basically told, give me some of your wages now before you lose it. So this was quite a revelation for me, as you can imagine, and to say that I kind of tried to make hay while the sun shone would be understating it. I would just go round, and I would drive out as well. I'd drive out to a nearby place like Sulby. I would drive to Peel. When I was in town, I would go round the pubs in Douglas, that is, the capital, and I would just force anything that I could find, and overall I actually did okay out of it. But that's not to say that I didn't get over enthusiastic either. And what you will find is, and what I found at the time, is if you start hitting them too often, like I got to the point where I was going back every couple of days. I mean, yes, this is when the pubs were a lot busier and far more people played the fruit machine. But if I was taking 45, 60 quid out of it on a Monday after work, they wouldn't have recovered by Wednesday, because they've just had 2 weekdays and 2 weekday nights. And what you'd find is not only would it start to cost more to force them, they would stop doing, they'd stop doing 60s pretty early on. Then you'd get a 45, then they'd stop doing 45s. And then what I found is that they would finally go down to a 30, where you get just a jackpot on a single repeat that might be costing you perhaps 25 quid to get. And I think finally, if you were really hitting them too often in a quieter pub, as I ended up doing, I think you'd just get a jackpot and no repeat, no invincible board, and then maybe the next board. One thing that it liked to do off the 5th feature up here, which you can see, is nudge spinner. That would sometimes, if it started at 2 and then went 3, 4, what that meant is it would then go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 15, all the way to a jackpot, and you could get a second jackpot out of it like that. So you could still get 30 quid, but at that point you're possibly putting the best part of £30 in. So you did have to be sensible about it. This wasn't any kind of full empty by any stretch of the imagination. But I eased off a little bit after that, and if you timed it right, if you kind of got the pacing on them right, and you tailored it according to the pub and how busy the pub was and how much play they were getting, you could fairly reliably get 45s out of them for anything between sort of 10 and maybe 25 quid in, which represented a decent profit. And it, like I say, from being basically skint by the middle of the month, almost without fail, I ended up, I remember very, very clearly having so many bags of pound coins lined up on a chest of drawers that Mrs. Degsy got to, like, are you going to do something with them? Because I don't like having that much cash just lying around. So it was quite a change of pace for me. So whilst I realised that the machines here are as basic as you can possibly imagine, there's really nothing to these in terms of skill or tactics. You just force them. They were an absolute change of pace for me of the highest order, in that I went from being a loser to being a winner. And the other thing was, once I understood, hang on a minute, it's actually possible to win on these things, that then made me more curious. So I started reaching out a little bit more, got chatting to people behind the scenes, and I think people were fairly, it was strange because people were fairly happy to share things with me. I think part of that was because they kind of knew that I was on the Isle of Man, so there was absolutely no risk whatsoever of me kind of turning up on their patch, because I was literally across a body of water. And the other thing was, I think I tended, I wasn't leaky with the information that I got, so nothing that was told to me was repeated back out on the list or carelessly spread around or anything like that. So off the back of finding out about the force and finding out that it was a real thing and it worked, I then started to get curious about other things, and off the back of that I got the lot of luck manipulator. I got the Psycho Cash Beast manipulator. Someone then told me about numbering. He didn't tell me the whole thing, but he said, look, you seem like a fairly bright guy. Just watch what's happening when you're playing JPMs. Just keep an eye. I do remember he kind of said, just keep an eye on the number reel. Well, when you're playing them, to just try and tie in with what you're seeing on the number reel when you're playing it, and what kind of mood it was in, and with a little back and forth after that. Got the numbering thing. Okay, I'm looking out for 1s and 12s when I'm playing JPMs and aces. Then other conversations. It was like, also with JPMs and aces, you don't want to force them. Look for other ways to get the value out of them. Look at the features. Look at the barcodes. All that kind of thing. So whereas once I found out this, I would be say forcing a Caesar's Palace, within 3 or 4 months I was playing for the barcodes and playing for Roman reels and playing for, can't remember what it's called on the other side now, where it goes all, is it up Pompeii that goes all the way to the top? And out of that, over a short period of time, from finding out about the force, over the next sort of 3, 4, 5, 6 months, I went to having a fairly decent basic knowledge set. And I'm not making myself out to be any kind of skillful player or anything like that. I really didn't work any of it out for myself. A couple of guys did give me pointers and kind of nudge me in the right direction and let me fill in the blanks, but it basically, like I say, it was a watershed period of time from that initial moment of finding out about the force to getting within 6 months what I would consider you would enough information. Let me put it this way: it was enough information to go out to the pub with the expectation of winning, with the expectation of making a profit. That's not to say that it didn't always come unstuck. I remember when the pie factories first turned up. There is a video on the channel about pie factories and clones. I didn't have the information on that, tried to force them, didn't do well off that, and was kind of a little bit lost with pie factories for a while. Didn't like them at all. It was only when finally got the full method for that pie factories started to become of interest to me. There was a period of time when I kind of avoided them because I didn't know what to do with them. But it also gave me, this is the other thing, it gave me a little bit more in the way of smarts about playing fruit machines. As I've previously mentioned, I would just play anything and everything, whatever state it was in, and just kind of get blown away. Whereas now I was thinking about things a little bit more, armed with this information that there were ways to get on top of fruit machines and ways to win out of them. That made me think then, okay, there are obviously times when you shouldn't play them. There are machines that perhaps need to be avoided. Weigh up if this machine is looking lively or not. Obviously the thing with the numbering on the JPMs, that told me, you know what, there's a very clear way to tell that you should be walking away from a machine and not playing it. And I kind of extrapolated that to other machines to kind of work out, hang on a minute, is this thing completely on its arse? Should I walk away? That kind of thing. So even though in and of itself I realise it's not a particularly exciting method that I'm going to be doing here, because what I'm going to do here is just force these out. The other problem is that both of these are chipped. I do not believe that we have the unchipped ROMs for any of this family machines. I think we've got late chips for all of them. And incidentally, I do remember the rechips turning up, and it was really quite annoying. Once the rechips started turning up, back end of the £15 era, basically what would happen is you'd force them out and they wouldn't do the streak. Sometimes they would repeat. Sometimes you would get an invincible board. So, you know, the machine was still keeping to percentage, but rather as in the past where you could force them out to this lump where they chuck them like a 45 at you. They were far, far flatter, and they didn't seem to have that little save in them, that little saved value that you could get with the force. And the rechips, once the rechips started, they actually happened fairly quickly. And it was over a fairly short period of time that most of these got chipped up and they stopped being the earners that they had been. But I actually got a reasonable run on them, enough to make my first serious cash back after losing solidly for 10 years. These machines alone, just this whole family of forcible machines, got me a chunk of it back. And when I say a chunk, I mean a small chunk. It's not like I came close to making back, I don't know, 5% of my lifetime losses. But it was enough to plant the seed in my mind and demonstrate to me that it was actually possible to win on these things, which prior to that was something I just assumed that everyone was as dumb as me, and all these boxes of flashing lights were there for was just to take your money off you, and there was no way around it, there was no way to beat them. And yet it turned out with something as simple as forcing them, it was actually possible. So let's have a little force on Arabian Knights here. Now I've used autoplay to spank around at this quite a bit. Let's put some money in. I've used autoplay to spank around it. It's put a fair few £100 through it, but unfortunately it managed to keep it pretty much bang on percentage, which is rather annoying. So I don't think it's actually got any stored value in it, which is quite annoying. So plus it's chipped as well, so I'm not entirely clear on what we're likely to see here. I suspect it's not going to be anything. Oh, so we have got a feature there. Well, that's not bad. Now, I used to go off if the bonus, and I could be wrong, but I always used to go off the fact if this bonus was starting with anything in it, it was a good sign, and the higher the better. I think if it was starting at skill stop, you were really quite happy about it. Now, Nudge Spinner sometimes could do a cheeky jackpot. Let's get our little lamps here. Now, what you could do, and what I believe was the best thing to do, to force these, because they love to give collect prizes. Is that going to be higher? Yeah. Because they love to give collect prizes, I believe the best thing to do was just force it out on the high-low gamble, because the high-low gamble will go to a jackpot repeater. You don't have to get the jackpot repeater off the feature. And for some reason, oh, there's a collect prize, for example. Well, we can cheat a little bit. Oh, fucking hell, it's going to be... So that's the least we can get off it there, £4. So this is an indication of how basic my inverted commas skills were. That I didn't clock onto that, and I would always try and force them out for the £15 repeater at the top of any of the stacks here. And someone did mention to me some time later, in fact, why did you do that? Why don't you just force it out on the high-low? Then it can't force a collect prize on you. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Silly old me. So I cannot stress enough that I was a real basic level player. I had no particular abilities or skills, and I'm not saying that I was doing this right or in the best possible way. I was just forcing them in as basic a way as you can imagine. Now we've nearly actually got the jackpot repeater there, haven't we? If I can get one more cash, I mean obviously I can get two of the lamps in here. If we can just... Oh, real stepper. That's only going to give me 2, though, isn't it? I don't think that's really... Oh, dear. Don't you dare give... Does it do it? Does it do it like that, this one? No, it doesn't. I thought it was like Spike the Biker, where... That was slightly... There's possibly something better I could have done there, I've got to say. Let's have a look. So it does seem to be fairly happy to lob the feature at me. I think I was only kind of a spin away there from getting a jackpot repeater. Okay, so we have got the feature again. Have we got a win? It's quite good if you can get a high win and exchange on this. It does give you a pretty good shot at getting the jackpot repeater. I am quite happy, though, with the fact that I'm seeing that. When it's on its arse, I think it won't even give you a move forward 3 at feature entry when it's on its arse. The problem with this, though, is that it wasn't as bad on the collect prizes, by the way. Before the rechips, I think that was one of the kind of ways that they tried to stop you forcing it, was just making it incredibly happy to give you a collect prize. And if I can get a nudge here, even a nudge would get me the super feature open, because I can use the ad again. Okay, so we've got the ad again. I will use the ad again. There we are, and now we can start to high-low up here. We'll go for that. Oh, I'm not going to risk that, so we have to take a spin here. And that's not giving me a good number, which is a shame. Oh, that's... You know what? I don't actually... I'm going to cancel that, because it's not going to lose on a 2. And I want to keep those lamps up there, because I might need them to change the number again. Fuck. Oh, that's fine. We'll have a... Well, if I stop it... Hang on a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I want a 9 here, actually, don't I? And that'll be it. And then I can take me 3 cash knockout. Yeah, and that guarantees it then, doesn't it? That's fine. So can't miss. And there is a jackpot repeater. That's splendid. Nice little jackpot sequence on this. Let's have a little watch and listen. It was always a nice, especially a dark. So it looks really good on this layout, by the way. This is a Tommy C layout for the new version of MFME. This was released just last month, actually, so it's nice to have a proper play on it. And thank you for this release, Tommy C. It's nice to have a bang up to date, shiny DX for this. It really is. No repeat, and that's fine. Now, on the unchipped ones, if anything, I found that you didn't want it to repeat. If you got a repeat on that, and that's 30 quid, what I generally found was there was no invincible board, and that tended to mean that 30 quid was your lot. I actually preferred it not to repeat, because that meant that the invincible board was more likely to come in next, and it was the invincible board that then liked to repeat. And that, of course, would be your 45 quid. Now, this can do an invincible board, but because it's chipped, there's no guarantee it's going to do an invincible board. Whereas on the original ones that I was playing, I would be effectively completely confident that I was going to get an invincible board next. Because I didn't get the repeat on the jackpot, I would now be waiting for the next board to be invincible, and that would be that. But I'm not actually... oh, that was the wrong dodge there. I'm not actually expecting on this because it is chipped. And it could, incidentally, it could make you wait a few quid for the next feature. It was not like it would drop in straight away. You could sometimes put in a few quid for it. And Red Hot Knights was particularly dirty. Because even unchipped, what Red Hot Knights liked to do was do 1 or 2 boards of non-invincible, and then it would do the invincible board. It was a nasty little variation. It was only Red Hot Knights that did it. So I'd get what I got there, which is the first jackpot, but then the next board wouldn't be invincible. You could then do another board, and that wouldn't be invincible, and then the third board after would actually be invincible. So you could, and that of course meant that you had to put more in to get it. It also meant that it was harder to spot a rechip, because on Arabian Knights and Monty Python's and Neptune's Treasure, if you didn't get an invincible, so you got a non-repeating jackpot, and if the next board wasn't invincible, you were kind of pretty sure it was chipped, and that was that. Whereas on a Red Hot Knights, because they could do unchipped, a gap of like a couple of boards before doing the invincible board, it was harder to tell if they were chipped or not, which made them slightly annoying. So let's see if we get an invincible board here. I'm not banking on it. No. Unfortunately, and that is the problem with the chipped one. So what we might do here is see if we... Oh, fucking hell! That was a bit harsh, though, wasn't it? 2 spin death. Let's have them. We'll take it out to another feature, but... as far as I'm aware, we do not have a unchipped ROM set for this, so I cannot show it working properly, unfortunately. That should be a feature. Let's just see. You never know. No. But you can also see now that I'm not getting anything on the bonus. It's not filling anything in on the bonus trail for me. And that was generally a sign of a pretty dead machine, or that was how I used to work with it anyway. So we can have a little gamble up here. We could have a go on a 4. Okay. Oh dear. So that's on its arse, isn't it? So that's it. We had 1 non-repeating jackpot. And unfortunately, that was kind of where you were at with the rechips. They could just do this. And you can see there, I would have basically had money back here. So obviously you've got to go for another board to see if it's chipped or not, and then at that point I'm 16 quid in for £15 out. Let's take a nudge spinner, because nudge spinner can do a jackpot. So let's just collect that. If it starts off at 2 quid, no, it's not going to do it. It has to start at 2 quid. I'll collect 4 quid here if it's offered. I should, in fact, you know what? Yo, it's collected it for me. And that was kind of what they went to on the rechip. So, as you can see there, I am 16 quid in and 18 quid out. And that was about the size of it on the rechips. They went from being very, very pleasantly profitable machines to being, frankly, rather uninspiring. So let's have a look at Monty Python's Flying Circus. Now, this isn't... Oh, why did I go for red sems? That was a misnudge. This layout is going back a long way. This was one of the original MFME 9.4 layouts. That was the leaked version of the emulator that opened up MPU 5 and Scorpion 4. And this was one of the layouts released for that. It is going on a bit. It was released by a guy called Scott, according to the title bar. So thank you to Scott for this machine from many years ago. Now that's not looking great to me because I have started off with no bonus. Let's just see what it wants. Oh dear. Oh god. And it's done that, so there we are. I mean, there's not really much to show you here, because they are both chipped, so you're not going to get a huge amount of mileage out of them. That's not to say that they couldn't still sometimes behave. I do remember going through Liverpool Airport once, and they had a Monty Python on a £25 upgrade, so obviously chipped, because they got chipped on the £15 jackpot, so the 25s were all chipped. Forced it out, just because, you're stuck in departures and you're waiting for your flight, what you're going to do. Forced it out for a jackpot, and it did an invincible board. Next board, and that was 50 quid out. So that wasn't to say that they weren't completely pointless on the rechip. You could still win on them, but they went from being, for me at least, dependable money earners to something that you'd have a go on if the pub had it. It wasn't something that you'd go seeking out. That was the other thing. I would seek these things out wherever I could find them. These two here, any of the clones, whereas after that, they were just another fruit machine, really, that wasn't particularly exciting. And I think Autoplay has done, somehow Autoplay has managed to do a pretty good... oh, hang on a minute, you know what, I could have done far better than that there. If I survive... Oh, Jesus. Oh, well, shall we click Nudge Spinner and see if it starts at 2 quid? No, that means it's not going to go to the jackpot. It has to start off at 2 quid, and then it goes all the way straight to the top. And this is doing its usual thing here, so it's probably going to auto-collect 2 quid there, is it? Yes. So, not really much we can do about that. And not much else that I can do with these full stop, really, because they are chipped. If there are any early ROM sets running around, it would be interesting to see them. But in essence, if you never played these for real yourself... Oh! Crikey! Look at that! Well, we'll have it. I'll take it. That's a bit of a bizarre jackpot, isn't it? Obviously, as you'd imagine on this, a tremendous sample package on this one. Very good license to get, Monty Python. Let's see if we can get a repeat. No repeat. Well, you know what? For the sake of it, we have got the jackpot repeater there, so we'll take it out to another board. It is a little bit of a shame that I can't demonstrate the thing itself, because I really do like, in my videos, to be able to kind of demonstrate the thing that it is that I'm talking about. But it really is as simple as, instead of what Arabian Knights did there, and just like your next board is just a shit board, your next board is an invincible board, and it's probably, as long as you've timed it right, it's probably going to repeat and give you a grand total of 45 quid. I will just see this out to a board and see if we can get, we'll hold it, an invincible board, because you get a really nice sample on this as well. You get, nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. Is there a Dewberry? Oh god, that was the wrong one, wasn't it? Come on. Let's see if we can get a another feature here. There we are. We'll soon find out. No. And we've got a mystery win. £2.80, so slightly underwhelming there. No invincible board for us. Well, we can get the super feature open. There we are. Well, we'll have a crack at it. So higher than a 2. I mean, I could almost just go for nudge spin. Oh, well, we'll have... Oh, in fact, there's half a chance here, isn't there? Let's go lower than that. And add again. Well, I'm guaranteed 12 quid, aren't I? You know, I should... well, it doesn't really matter, is it? Oh, I'll go... Yeah, I'll go higher than a 3. Ah, there we are. We'll collect our cash knockouts, and that will be another jackpot. Oh, you've got to press that, haven't you? Well done, Degsy. Really great sample package on this. If you do play it, let all the samples loop through. Well, I got another jackpot, but not quite as how we were expecting. I do remember, with Monty Python as well, they had this in the Royal Oak in Ramsey. And because it was a time when, far more people played fruit machines. Oh, there we are, look at that. It's alright, isn't it? Oh, and because, people played the fruit machines then, and fruit machines could still generate some interest, I do remember people, and people would just come up and talk to me and say, why are you not collecting Crazy Streak, or why are you not collecting your knockouts, why are you just going for the jackpot? And you'd have to kind of flannel them and say, oh, well, I've lost a few quid. It's like, I need to get a jackpot and a repeat to try and get some money back. But it did garner a little bit of interest that there was this guy who was just playing all out for nothing other than the jackpot, and it did strike other people as curious enough for them to kind of ask me about it and what was I doing, why was I playing the machine the way I was playing it. Can we get a... Well, we can get a feature there. Let's see. I'd just like the sample when you get an invincible board. You can see it straight away. Nope, that's it. You get the Spanish Inquisition sample when it's an invincible board. Oh, 80p, well done. And I think that's probably dead now because we're getting no bonusy type things. If I can get it up to Nudge Spinner, I'll collect Nudge Spinner. Oh dear. I'm surprised it didn't kill me there. Step to nearest win is £2. I think that's probably going to have me, is it? Oh, collect prize. Well, still I've one on it though. So as you can see here, even on a chipped one, it didn't mean they were a dead loss. It didn't mean that they were completely unplayable. It just meant they were really other fruit machine. They went from a fruit machine that had a method to a fruit machine where you were just taking your chances, really. And you just kind of never really saw the invincible board, which is a bit of a shame. Because they all did a nice, lovely, swoopy, sampley type thing. Oh dear. Neptune's Treasure had a really nice shimmery sound effect when a lovely little kind of swoosh of the lights when you got an invincible board, and you kind of never saw it. Once they got rechipped, it was basically you would never see an invincible board, which is a bit of a shame. But I think that kind of covers it, really. The point of these, really, more than the machines themselves, not least because these are all chipped and I can't even demonstrate the invincible boards, was that these machines here, this very short time, sort of short time frame in the £15 era, these machines here represent the absolute first machines that I could go around and make money on. The very first one, that there, in essence, is not the first machine that I forced, because if you remember back to the Empire video, I kind of did forcing on Empires by myself, just on the £10 Empires. I would kind of force them, but somehow I just didn't join the dots and think to try it on anything else. So Hi-Jinx here was the first machine that I went up to with this information that had been passed out to me. I walked up to it with the absolute intention of just forcing it out with the hope that I was going to get the streak, and it did it. And from that moment on, in essence, that was when as I've said it earlier on in this video, I went from losing all the time to winning most of the time. And certainly my overall results went from being down, consistently down and horribly down, and getting very, very miserable, and with all the attendant problems with that, I then became overall a very clumsy, very amateurish, very unskilled, and yes, dependent on being given information to a very large extent. I'm not pretending otherwise. But the fact remains that this whole family of machines, and particularly forcible Barcrests, represented the point in time, that watershed moment when I realised that I could win on fruit machines and started to do so, and was then able to slowly but surely chip away bit by bit at a decade of terrible, terrible losses. And not just financial losses, because part of me, when I went out and as our financial situation improved, it wasn't just about the money. I kind of did it because every time I went out and won, it was just a little bit of payback for the misery that these things had caused me. It was kind of personal. It was kind of a vendetta. It was kind of like, yes, I'm going to get you back a bit, you fuckers, along those lines, which was probably more emotionally involved than I should have been, but that's how I felt. So there you go. That's it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I'll catch up with you next time. But for now, goodbye.